Let's find out if Moscow is right for you. I'm here to help you decide, are the pros worth the cons? I'm Chris Carpenter, a longtime resident and real estate agent in Moscow, Idaho. In this video, we'll look at the 6 biggest pros and the 4 worst cons of Moscow. But first, there are 2 big elephants in the room. If you've done any amount of research into Moscow, the top results are likely surrounding the tragic quadruple homicide in 2022. And the question that's probably burning in your mind is Moscow safe? That's actually the first pro that we'll talk about. If you're concerned about safety, we have an in-depth video that answers the question, is Moscow safe? Check it out here. The second elephant is that Moscow is centered at a lot of controversy. This isn't necessarily a pro or a con, but it's definitely something that you'll want to know about. The main source of controversy stems from the different worldviews that exist in Moscow. Where you have outspoken people with differing beliefs, there's bound to be sparks and conflicts. I would recommend that you do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Regardless of where you land when it comes to Moscow controversies, my purpose in these videos is to provide you with insider information that will help you see what it's like to live in Moscow. One thing that I will say is that the controversy doesn't seem to impact day-to-day life here. People remain friendly and most people on the street are cordial and easy to strike up a conversation with. And with all that said, let's talk about our first pro. The main demographic that we see moving to Moscow are families. The reason is that Moscow is a family-friendly place, and that's pro number 1. Regardless of the most recent news coverage, Moscow has a long-standing reputation of low crime rates, with violent crime being about 90% lower than the national average. Now, in no way do I want to downplay the heartbreaking tragedy of 2022, but I do think I speak for many Moscow residents when I say that 2022 is not a true representation of our community or necessarily the defining event of our town. Locals know that Moscow is overwhelmingly a wonderful, friendly, peaceful place to live. And when hardship hits, we band together and support each other. That's what we want people to know our town for. Small town living is great. You get to know your neighbors, you hang out at parks and community events. It's the best. Until you need access to essential amenities. The trick is finding a town that's not too big and not too small, which is Moscow's pro number 2. Despite its size, for the most part, you can get everything you need in town. This wasn't always the case, but in the last few years, we've seen a steady increase of big box stores coming to town. In early 2025, we're expecting the grand opening of our new Home Depot and an Amazon distribution facility just across the border in Washington. And for the most part, what you can't find in major grocery stores, you'll find in other local businesses and boutiques. Speaking of daily life, one thing that locals absolutely love about Moscow is our food scene, including a summer event that has brought Moscow national recognition. Pro number 3 is that for its size, Moscow has a fantastic food scene. If there's one thing you do for fun in Moscow, it's sample the food. And there are tons of locally owned restaurants and coffee shops to choose from. They range from high-class cocktail lounges to lively pub-style eats and even comfy breakfast food. Summer is especially fun because the city puts on one of the best farmers markets in the country. It really supports all of the pros that we've talked about so far. Moscow's farmers market is the biggest event of the summer, and it happens every Saturday. One of my family's favorite traditions is we load up our bikes and ride down to the farmer's market. My wife and I get an iced coffee and the kids split a sister's cookie and we listen to the live music. Vendors cycle in and out every week, so there's guaranteed to be something new every time you go. It's one of the cornerstone events in Moscow that gets people out of doors and around their neighbors. Everyone loves it. Farm fresh produce, meats, and handcrafted goods of all kinds give you even more local shopping options. And of course, there are always many amazing street food vendors to choose from. Beyond food, pro number 4, Moscow has a ton of in-town outdoor recreation options tailored to families and some fantastic cyclist options. We have 17 neighborhood parks spread throughout town. You can hardly throw a rock without hitting one. There are ball fields and nature parks. The University of Idaho Arboretum offers you a peaceful place to walk, and the Latah Bike Trail gives you 12 miles of running, walking, or cycling to enjoy. For mountain bikers like me, Moscow Mountain is crisscrossed with trails of varying difficulty. And we have a small track just across from the Arboretum if you want to get your kids involved in one of your favorite hobbies early. We all know that big city traffic can be a pain. So if you're moving from a major city, you are going to love pro number 5. Moscow has short commutes. In Moscow, long commute times simply aren't the case. It takes maybe 10 minutes to drive from one end of Moscow to the other. Another perk of small town living. Plus, you can walk and bike around town safely and easily. Moscow is a town with colleges attached to it. Any pros and cons list would be incomplete without mentioning the colleges, which is pro number 6. We have great local higher education options. One reason this is a favorite is that you can keep the family together through the college years. Moscow is the home to the University of Idaho with a focus on agriculture, engineering, and law. New St. Andrews College adds a unique academic option with a classical Christian liberal arts degree and master's in pastoral programs. And just across the border in Pullman, Washington State University is known for its veterinary and business programs. Of course, no place is perfect. Let's address a key challenge for anyone considering a move with our first con: housing availability. Housing in Moscow is in high demand, and finding affordable options can be a challenge, particularly for families. New developments across town, including a housing development near the university, are starting to address the issue. But historically, Moscow's expansion has been slow and steady, with demand outpacing supply for years. This is less of an issue if you're coming from a large city, since the cost of living in Moscow tends to be much lower, but the variety of homes is limited, so you might find it challenging to find exactly what you want. We cover the 3 biggest expenses in Moscow and compare the overall cost of living compared to a few popular cities that we see people moving from in a separate video. So check that out if you want a clear picture of the financial side of living in Moscow. With housing on your mind, you might also be wondering about employment opportunities. How are you going to pay the bills? And this is our second con. Moscow has limited job opportunities compared to some other towns. The biggest employers in the area are Gritman Medical, Pullman Regional, Schweitzer Engineering, U of I, WSU, and Lightcast. There are also plenty of construction and trades jobs due to the constant need for more housing. But apart from that, other industry opportunities rely on the needs of local businesses and startups. The variety of job opportunities is semi-sparse compared to other major cities. But we are seeing more and more people have the opportunity to work remotely and bring their jobs with them. So if that's you, this column might actually not apply. Now that we've talked about housing and jobs, let's talk about one of the most unpredictable parts about life in Moscow that I think many people will see as a con. Unpredictable weather takes the spot as con number 3. Moscow's seasons march to their own beat. Some winters bring only a dusting of snow, while others bring several feet that sticks around. Sometimes winter temperatures are consistently in the negatives, while other times they fluctuate between 30s and 40s for most of the winter. Springs can be rainy or feel like early summer, and summers themselves range from mild 70s to stretches of 90 or over 100-degree weather. So you never really know what you're gonna get. Finally, our last con comes down to amenities. Though we have necessities covered, extensive entertainment and for-fun shopping isn't gonna be anything like your big city options. Major shopping centers, entertainment, or specialized healthcare typically require locals to make an hour-and-a-half drive to Spokane or Coeur d'Alene. They're the closest large cities and have a lot more shopping and entertainment, especially if you like concerts. So there you have it. Moscow, Idaho offers a lot for families and retirees. It's a safe, welcoming, small-town community. Essential amenities are covered with some charming local boutiques and in-town outdoor recreation. But like any place, it comes with its challenges. Now you have the 6 biggest pros and 4 worst cons of Moscow. But there's another factor that can completely change your living experience. Each neighborhood has its own demographic and vibe. So if you want to be sure that you end up in a neighborhood you love, check out this video introducing you to all the major neighborhoods in Moscow. And visit the Living in Moscow, Idaho channel for everything you need to know about life in Moscow.